Marcus Cole sat alone on his porch in rural Montana, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains. The bottle of whiskey beside him was half empty. His right leg ached where the metal brace held it together. 3 years since Afghanistan. 3 years since the explosion that killed his entire squad. 3 years of nightmares and empty days. The 42-year-old veteran had served 20 years in the United States Army. He had fought in deserts and jungles. He had earned medals and scars. But none of that mattered now. The world had moved on. His wife had left. His children barely called. Marcus was just another forgotten soldier, living alone in a cabin he built with his own hands. He reached for the bottle when the sky above him suddenly turned purple. Marcus dropped the glass. He grabbed the hunting rifle leaning against the wall. Old instincts kicked in immediately. His eyes scanned the tree line. His hands steadied despite his racing heart. Whatever was coming, he would face it like he faced everything else, head on and ready to fight. A beam of golden light shot down from the purple clouds. It landed in his front yard, burning a perfect circle into the grass. Marcus raised his rifle and aimed at the center of the light. What stepped out of that beam made him question his sanity. It was a wolf, but not like any wolf Marcus had ever seen. This creature stood as tall as a horse. Its fur shimmered with colors that did not exist in nature. Blue mixed with silver, mixed with something that looked like captured starlight. Its eyes were the color of molten gold, and they held an intelligence that made Marcus lower his weapon slightly. Behind the wolf came a figure that confirmed Marcus was either dreaming or had finally lost his mind. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. It stood 7 feet tall with skin the color of polished bronze. Its eyes were entirely black, like looking into deep space. It wore robes made of material that seemed to flow like liquid metal. A crown of floating crystals circled its head. Marcus kept his rifle raised. His voice came out steady despite everything. "You're on private property." The alien tilted its head. A smile crossed its strange face. When it spoke, the words formed directly in Marcus's mind, rather than through sound. Marcus Cole, Sergeant First Class, 20 years of service, 47 confirmed combat engagements, recipient of the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Purple Heart. The human who carried 3 wounded soldiers through enemy fire for 6 miles with a shattered leg. Marcus did not lower his weapon. "How do you know that?" "I am Zorkon the Eternal, High King of the Valoran Empire. My people have watched humanity for 3,000 of your years. We have studied your species with great interest, and I have been watching you specifically for the past decade." "Why?" The alien king gestured toward the massive wolf. "Because I am dying, Marcus Cole. And before I pass into the void, I must find a worthy guardian for my most precious companion." The wolf sat down on its haunches. It was looking at Marcus with an expression he could only describe as curiosity. Then it opened its mouth and spoke in perfect English. "You smell like sadness and cheap alcohol. Wonderful. My new human is a mess." Marcus stared at the talking wolf. Then he looked at the alien king, then back at the wolf. He set down his rifle and picked up the whiskey bottle. "I'm going to need more of this." The wolf made a sound that might have been laughter. "I already like him." Zorkon approached Marcus slowly, his movements graceful despite his size. "This is Vex. He has been my companion for 800 years. He is the last of the Star Wolves, a species created by my ancestors to bond with worthy souls. When I die, he will need a new partner, someone whose spirit matches his own. And you picked me?" Marcus shook his head. "There must be millions of beings in your empire. Warriors, kings, people who actually matter. I have searched my empire thoroughly. I have examined billions of souls across 1,000 worlds. None of them were right." Zorkon's voice in Marcus's mind carried something like wonder. "Do you know what makes humans special, Marcus Cole?" We're stubborn idiots who don't know when to quit? Precisely. The alien king smiled. The galaxy is filled with species that are stronger than humans, faster than humans, more intelligent than humans, species that can live for millennia, species that can breathe in vacuum or survive the heart of a star. But none of them have what humans have, which is the refusal to accept defeat. Zorkon's dark eyes seemed to look through Marcus into something beyond. I watched you in that desert. Your leg was destroyed. You were bleeding from a dozen wounds. Any logical being would have given up, would have accepted death. But you picked up your fallen brothers and you walked for 6 miles through enemy territory. You walked until your bones showed through your skin. And when you reached safety, you apologized for not being able to save the others. Marcus felt his throat tighten. He did not like to remember that day. That is what makes humans extraordinary, Zorkon continued. Your bodies break, your minds crack, your hearts shatter, but something inside you refuses to stop. You call it stubbornness. We call it something else. In the old language of my people, the word is Jal Teth. It means the fire that cannot be extinguished. Vex the Star Wolf stood and walked toward Marcus. Each step was graceful, predatory, and somehow also gentle. The creature stopped directly in front of the veteran and looked up at him. I can see your fire, human. It's buried under pain and guilt and loneliness, but it's still burning, still waiting. The wolf's golden eyes held Marcus's gaze. I have lived for 800 years. I have bonded with emperors and generals, with saints and warriors. I have never felt a fire like yours. Marcus wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them they had made a mistake. He was no hero. He was just a broken man drinking himself to death in a cabin in the mountains. But before he could speak, Zorkon raised his hand. I do not have much time. The death sleep is calling me. Before I go, I must complete the transfer. The alien king looked at Marcus with something like hope. Will you accept this duty, Marcus Cole? Will you take Vex as your companion? Not as a servant or a pet, but as a partner, a brother, a friend? Marcus looked at the wolf. At those golden eyes that seemed to see everything he was, everything he had been, everything he might still become. Why would you want to stay with me? I'm nobody. I have nothing. Vex's tail swayed slightly. You have a roof. You have land. You have that wonderful thing humans call opposable thumbs for opening food containers. And you have a soul worth bonding with. That is more than enough. Despite everything, Marcus felt the corner of his mouth twitch upward. You're pretty chatty for a wolf. 800 years gives one plenty of time to develop conversational skills. Also, I find silence boring. Be warned that I have opinions about everything and I express them freely. Fantastic. Zorkon stepped forward and placed his bronze hand on Marcus's shoulder. The touch sent warmth flooding through the veteran's body. Pain he had carried for years suddenly eased, not disappeared, but lessened, made bearable. The bond must be sealed with blood and promise, Zorkon said. Are you ready? Marcus took a deep breath. He thought about his empty cabin, his empty life, the years stretching ahead with nothing to fill them. Then he looked at Vex, at this impossible alien creature who somehow saw value in a broken soldier. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm ready. Zorkon produced a small crystal blade. He made a small cut on Marcus's palm, then did the same to Vex's paw. When the blood touched, light exploded around them. Marcus felt something click into place in his mind. A presence, warm and vast and ancient. Hello, Marcus. Vex's voice now came from inside his head as well as outside. This is going to be interesting. Zorkon stepped back. His form was becoming transparent. The death sleep was taking him. Guard each other well, the alien king said. The galaxy is changing. Dark times are coming. Humanity will soon face a choice that will determine the fate of every living being in existence. When that moment comes, you will need each other. What do you mean? What choice? But Zorkon was fading. His last words echoed in Marcus's mind. Remember the fire, Marcus Cole. Remember that it cannot be extinguished, and remember that you are not alone anymore. Then he was gone. The purple sky returned to normal. The golden light disappeared, and Marcus was left standing in his yard with a horse-sized alien wolf that could speak inside his mind. Vex looked around at the cabin, the mountains, the darkening sky. Then he looked at Marcus. I'm hungry. What do humans eat? Please tell me it's not vegetables. I had a partner once who only ate plants. Most boring 300 years of my existence. Marcus stared at the wolf. Then he started laughing. It was the first time he had laughed in 3 years. I've got elk steaks in the freezer. Excellent. I knew there was a reason I liked you. Vex started walking toward the cabin, then paused. Also, your leg. The brace. The bond will heal it over time. Probably take a few weeks. One of the benefits of being partnered with a star wolf. Marcus looked down at his leg, at the brace he had worn every day since the explosion. You can heal injuries? I can accelerate your body's natural healing processes. Among other things. Vex's golden eyes sparkled with amusement. Did you think bonding with an 800-year-old alien wolf would have no benefits? I'm not just a pretty face with excellent conversational skills, you know. What other abilities do you have? Vex walked up the steps to the porch. Oh, many things. Enhanced senses that I can share with you. The ability to communicate across vast distances, limited telepathy, accelerated reflexes, and I'm completely fireproof, which is more useful than you might think. Marcus followed the wolf into his cabin. The creature barely fit through the door. Inside, Vex examined everything with obvious curiosity. The simple furniture, the hunting trophies on the wall, the photographs of Marcus's old squad. These were your pack, Vex said quietly, looking at the photos. The ones you lost. Yeah. You carry their memory in your heart. That is good. The dead should be remembered. Vex turned away from the photos. But you also carry guilt that does not belong to you. That will take longer to heal than your leg. You read minds too? The bond allows me to sense your emotions. Your memories are your own, unless you choose to share them. Vex settled onto the floor near the fireplace. Now, about those elk steaks. I hope you have at least 10 pounds. I'm quite large and my metabolism is accordingly significant. Marcus went to the kitchen and started pulling meat from the freezer. His hands were shaking slightly. Not from fear, from something else. Something he had not felt in a very long time. Hope. He had a purpose again, a responsibility, something to care about beyond his own misery. Whether that was the wolf's plan or just a side effect of the bond, Marcus did not know. But for the first time in 3 years, he wanted to see what tomorrow would bring. You're thinking very loudly, Vex called from the other room. Mostly positive thoughts for once. This is encouraging. Marcus shook his head and smiled. You're going to be a handful, aren't you? I prefer the term entertainingly high maintenance. And you should know that I also shed considerably during the warmer months. You will need to invest in a quality vacuum cleaner. That night, Marcus grilled 20 pounds of elk meat on his back porch. Vex ate 18 pounds of it and then curled up by the fire like an oversized dog. The veteran sat in his chair, watching the flames reflect off the wolf's shimmering fur. Zorkon mentioned dark times coming. What did he mean? Vex's golden eyes opened. The humor was gone from his voice. The galaxy is on the edge of war. An empire called the Dominion of Shadows has been expanding for centuries. They conquer worlds, enslave populations, destroy any species they consider a threat, and they have recently discovered Earth. Marcus felt cold spread through his chest. They're coming here? Eventually. They always do. Vex raised his massive head. But humans are not as defenseless as you think. Your species has qualities that the Dominion has never encountered. Qualities that terrify them. Like what? Like the fire Zorkon spoke of. Like your pack loyalty, and your creativity, and your absolute refusal to surrender even when defeat is certain. Vex's tail swayed slowly. The Dominion has conquered 1,000 species. Every single one of them eventually broke, gave up, accepted subjugation. But humans? Your history is filled with examples of small groups defeating vast empires through sheer stubborn will. The Dominion does not know how to fight something that will not give up. Marcus processed this information. His soldier's mind was already analyzing, strategizing. So what do we do? For now, we prepare, we train, we strengthen the bond between us. Vex settled his head on his paws. And we wait for the war to come. Because it will come, Marcus. The question is not if. The question is when. The fire crackled. Outside, the Montana wind howled through the mountains. And in that small cabin, a broken veteran and an ancient alien wolf began a partnership that would change the fate of the galaxy. Get some sleep, Vex said. Tomorrow we start training. And I should warn you that my training methods are quite intense. I was Army for 20 years. I can handle intense. We'll see about that, human. We'll see. Marcus closed his eyes. For the first time in 3 years, he did not reach for the whiskey bottle. For the first time in 3 years, he looked forward to waking up. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. 3 months passed on the Montana mountainside. The winter snow had melted into spring, and Marcus Cole was no longer the same man. He ran through the forest at dawn, keeping pace with Vex despite the rough terrain. His leg had healed completely, just as the Star Wolf had promised. But more than that, his mind had healed. The nightmares still came sometimes, but they no longer controlled him. The guilt remained, but it no longer crushed him beneath its weight. Your stamina has improved considerably, Vex noted as they crested a ridge overlooking the valley. When we started, you could barely run 1 mile without stopping. You also weren't chasing me back then. Marcus bent over, catching his breath. Fear is a great motivator. I never actually intended to bite you. Probably. That's reassuring. The bond between them had grown stronger with each passing week. Marcus could now sense Vex's emotions as clearly as his own. He could see through the wolf's eyes when they focused together. He could feel the ancient creature's vast experience like a library in the back of his mind, ready to be accessed when needed. In return, Vex had learned what it meant to be human. The wolf had bonded with many species over his long life, but humans were different. Their emotions burned hotter. Their connections ran deeper. Their capacity for both violence and compassion exceeded anything Vex had encountered before. We should return to the cabin, Vex said. You have visitors approaching. 3 vehicles. Government markings. Marcus straightened. The bond let him tap into Vex's enhanced senses. He could smell the exhaust fumes now, hear the engines rumbling up the mountain road. Government? Military, specifically. They carry weapons and anxiety in equal measure. They reached the cabin just as 3 black SUVs pulled into the clearing. Men in suits emerged from the vehicles, followed by a woman in a general's uniform. Marcus recognized her immediately. General Hawkins. Sergeant Cole. The general's eyes moved to Vex, widening slightly before her professional mask returned. Or should I say, Mr. Cole? You've been busy. How did you find me? Please. You think a beam of purple light over Montana goes unnoticed? Every satellite we have recorded the event. It took us 3 months to confirm what happened and locate you." Hawkins walked closer, studying Vex with obvious fascination. "The Alien King. The transfer of the wolf. We know everything." Vex sat on his haunches, towering over the general despite the casual pose. "Everything is a strong word. You know very little, actually." Hawkins did not flinch at the wolf's voice, though several of her men reached for their weapons. "You can speak. I can do many things. Speaking is simply the most obvious." Vex's golden eyes examined the general. "You're afraid, but you're controlling it well. I respect that. I'm not afraid. Lying is impolite, General." "Your heartbeat suggests otherwise." Marcus stepped between them. "What do you want, Hawkins?" The general pulled out a tablet and handed it to him. 3 weeks ago, one of our deep space probes detected this." The screen showed an image that made Marcus's blood run cold. Ships, hundreds of them. Massive vessels unlike anything human technology could produce. They were shaped like black teardrops, and they were heading directly toward Earth. "The Dominion," Vex growled. "They're moving faster than I anticipated." "You know what these are?" Hawkins asked. "They are the vanguard of the Shadow Dominion, a fleet sent ahead to evaluate Earth's defenses before the main invasion force arrives." Vex looked at Marcus. "We have perhaps 6 months before they reach this system." Hawkins took back the tablet. "Which is why I'm here. The United Nations has been briefed. Every nation on Earth is preparing for what's coming. But we don't know how to fight something like this. Our weapons, our strategies, everything we know about warfare is designed for human enemies." "You want me to help," Marcus said. "I want both of you to help. The wolf has knowledge about these aliens. You have combat experience and a bond with an 800-year-old being that apparently considers you worthy." Hawkins met Marcus's eyes. "Earth needs you, Cole. Humanity needs you." Marcus felt Vex's presence in his mind. The wolf was sharing information, showing him what the Dominion had done to other worlds, burned cities, enslaved populations, entire species reduced to cattle for the shadow creatures that commanded the fleet. "How many soldiers do you have?" Marcus asked. "Every military force on Earth is now coordinating. We're talking about 10 million active troops worldwide." "That won't be enough." Hawkins nodded grimly. "We know. That's why we're recruiting everyone with combat experience. Veterans, reservists, anyone who can hold a weapon and follow orders." She paused. "We're also looking for leaders, people who can inspire others, people who have proven themselves under impossible conditions. And you thought of me. A man who walked 6 miles through enemy territory with a shattered leg carrying 3 wounded soldiers. Yes, I thought of you." Hawkins glanced at Vex. "Plus, you come with certain advantages now." Vex stood and walked toward the general. She stood her ground, though her guards stepped forward nervously. "I will help defend this world," the wolf said. "But you should understand something, General. I am not doing this for humanity as a whole. I am doing this for Marcus. He has chosen to protect his pack, and that makes his pack my pack. Where he goes, I go. What he fights, I fight." "Fair enough." Hawkins extended her hand to Marcus. "What do you say, Cole? Ready to come back to war?" Marcus looked at her hand, at the cabin behind him, at the mountains where he had planned to drink himself to death just 3 months ago. Then he looked at Vex. The wolf's golden eyes held steady. Trust flowed through the bond between them. Whatever Marcus decided, Vex would stand beside him. "I'll need a rank," Marcus said, shaking Hawkins's hand. "Something with authority. If I'm going to train soldiers to fight aliens, I can't be taking orders from lieutenants." "You've been reinstated as Sergeant Major. As of now, you report directly to me." Hawkins smiled slightly. "Welcome back to the Army, Cole." The next 3 months were the most intense of Marcus's life. The military set up a training facility in Nevada, far from civilian eyes, Soldiers from every nation arrived daily: Marines and Spetsnaz, SAS and Israeli Special Forces, Chinese commandos and Brazilian paratroopers. The best warriors humanity had to offer gathered together to prepare for an enemy none of them truly understood. Marcus trained them all. With Vex's knowledge flowing through their bond, he taught them how the Dominion fought, their tactics, their weaknesses, their psychology. He explained that the shadow creatures were ancient and arrogant. They had conquered 1,000 worlds and believed themselves invincible. That arrogance was their greatest weakness. They expect submission, Marcus told a room full of soldiers one morning. Every species they've encountered has eventually surrendered, given up hope, accepted their fate. He looked around at the faces watching him. American and Russian and Chinese and more. Old enemies united by a common threat. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. We're going to show them what happens when a species refuses to break. Vex attended every training session. The soldiers were terrified of him at first. An alien predator the size of a horse with glowing eyes and the ability to speak into their minds. But as the weeks passed, fear transformed into respect, and then into something like affection. The Starwolf had a talent for reading people. He could sense which soldiers were struggling and which were thriving. He reported his observations to Marcus, who adjusted training accordingly. Together, they turned a collection of individual warriors into something far more powerful. "You're creating a pack," Vex observed one night as they watched soldiers running night maneuvers. "The humans don't realize it, but you're binding them together the way I bind with my partners." "That's how soldiers survive," Marcus replied. "You don't fight for flags or governments. You fight for the people beside you, your brothers and sisters in arms." This is another thing that makes humans exceptional. Vex's tail swayed thoughtfully. Most species are either purely individualistic or purely collective. Humans are both simultaneously. "You value personal freedom fiercely, yet you will sacrifice everything for your pack. It's contradictory and beautiful." Marcus thought about his old squad, about the men and women he had lost in that explosion years ago. He still saw their faces every night before he fell asleep. But now, instead of drowning in guilt, he used those memories as fuel. He would honor their sacrifice by making sure these new soldiers survived what was coming. "Sir," a soldier jogged up to them. Lieutenant Kim, a Korean-American woman who had become one of Marcus's most trusted subordinates. "We've received word from General Hawkins. The Dominion fleet has accelerated. They'll be here in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Marcus felt the news hit him like a physical blow. They weren't ready. The training program was designed to take 6 months, and they had only completed half. "Pull everyone back," Marcus ordered. "Double the simulation drills. I want every soldier running combat scenarios until they can do them in their sleep." "Yes, sir." As Kim ran off, Vex moved closer to Marcus. "You're worried." "Of course I'm worried. We've barely started preparing. Half these soldiers still flinch when they see your projected images of Dominion warriors. Then they will learn not to flinch in actual combat. Humans adapt quickly under pressure. It's another of your species' gifts." Vex looked up at the stars. "The Dominion has never fought a species like humanity. They don't know what they're walking into." "You really believe that?" "I have lived for 800 years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched the Dominion conquer world after world, always in the same way. They arrive with overwhelming force. They demonstrate their power. The target species surrenders because the alternative seems hopeless." Vex's golden eyes gleamed in the darkness. But hopelessness requires the ability to give up hope, and humans seem constitutionally incapable of that. The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparation and anxiety. Marcus pushed the soldiers harder than he had ever pushed anyone. He demanded perfection in tactics and teamwork. He ran simulations until soldiers collapsed from exhaustion, then made them run more. He was cruel and relentless because the alternative was death for everyone on Earth. Some soldiers cracked under the pressure. They were sent home, not punished, but simply acknowledged as unable to continue. Marcus bore them no ill will. Not everyone was built for this kind of fight, but many more rose to the challenge. They transformed before his eyes from skilled warriors into something new, something harder and more determined, something that looked at images of Dominion monsters and no longer flinched. "They're ready," Vex said on the final night before the fleet arrived, "as ready as they can be. It's not enough. It never feels like enough. That's the burden of command." The wolf pressed his massive head against Marcus's shoulder. "But you have given them something more important than training. You have given them belief. They believe they can win because you believe they can win. That belief will carry them through battles that tactics alone cannot." Marcus sat in silence for a long moment. Tomorrow, alien ships would fill Earth's sky. Tomorrow, the fight for humanity's survival would begin. Tomorrow, many of the soldiers he had trained would die. "I didn't ask for this," he said quietly. "I didn't want to be responsible for all these lives again. Neither did I, when Zorkon first bonded with me. I was young and wild, and wanted nothing but to run free among the stars." Vex's voice was gentle. "But we do not choose our responsibilities. They choose us, and then we must decide whether to accept them or flee." "You accepted, Marcus. That is what makes you worthy of the bond." A siren sounded across the base. Marcus stood immediately. Through the bond, he felt Vex's senses expanding, reaching toward the sky. "They're here," the wolf said. Marcus looked up and saw the stars begin to disappear. Not because of clouds or darkness, but because something massive was blocking them out. The Dominion fleet had arrived early. The invasion of Earth had begun. General Hawkins's voice crackled over the base intercom. "All units to battle stations. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Around him, soldiers ran to their positions. Weapons were checked. Final prayers were whispered. Fear was pushed down, and discipline took its place. They were as ready as they would ever be. Marcus felt the bond with Vex pulse with energy. The Star Wolf's eyes were fixed on the sky, glowing brighter than Marcus had ever seen them. "Together?" the wolf asked. Marcus drew his sidearm and checked the magazine. "Together." They ran toward the command center, two warriors from different worlds united by something stronger than blood. Behind them, the greatest army humanity had ever assembled, prepared to face an enemy that had never known defeat. The Dominion expected conquest. They would find something very different. They would find humans. The Dominion ships hung in Earth's sky like a funeral shroud. 300 vessels, each one larger than an aircraft carrier, blocked out the sun over every major continent. Their black surfaces absorbed light and hope in equal measure. Marcus stood in the command center watching screens that showed scenes of chaos from around the world. Civilians fled to shelters. Military units deployed to defensive positions. World leaders broadcast messages of calm that no one believed. Then the Dominion spoke. Every electronic device on Earth suddenly displayed the same image. A creature of nightmares appeared on screens everywhere. It was humanoid, but wrong in ways that made the mind recoil. Skin like liquid shadow that constantly shifted, eyes that were holes into absolute darkness, a voice that scraped against the soul. Species designation, human. Your world has been selected for integration into the Shadow Dominion. You will not resist. You will not flee. You will submit to processing, and your species will serve the eternal darkness. This is not negotiable. This is your only future. The broadcast ended. Silence filled the command center. Then Marcus laughed. Everyone turned to look at him like he had lost his mind. Even Vex tilted his head in surprise. But Marcus kept laughing, a sound full of bitter amusement. "What's funny?" General Hawkins demanded. "They think that's intimidating? Marcus pointed at the screen where the shadow creature had appeared. I've had drill sergeants scarier than that thing. They clearly have no idea who they're dealing with. The tension in the room cracked slightly. A few soldiers smiled despite their fear. This was what they needed. Not panic, not despair. Defiance. Marcus turned to address the room. Listen up. These things have conquered 1,000 worlds because every species they've faced eventually gave up, surrendered, accepted defeat. His voice hardened. But they've never fought humans. They don't know that we've been fighting each other since the beginning of time. They don't know that we've survived ice ages and plagues and world wars. They don't know that giving up isn't in our nature. Vex moved to stand beside him, the Starwolf's presence adding weight to his words. What my partner says is true. The Dominion's strength is psychological as much as military. They expect surrender. They depend on it. When you refuse to break, you take away their greatest weapon. General Hawkins stepped forward. What's the battle plan? Marcus looked at the tactical displays showing Dominion positions. They're deploying landing craft in major cities. They want to establish ground control before we can organize resistance, but they're spread thin, trying to hit everywhere at once. He traced patterns on the map. We concentrate our forces, hit their landing zones hard, make them pay for every inch of ground in blood. We can't match their firepower, one of the officers said. Their ships have weapons we don't even understand. We don't need to match their firepower. We need to survive long enough to adapt, to learn their weaknesses, to find ways to hurt them they never anticipated. Marcus looked around the room. Every empire that ever conquered Earth thought the same thing. They had better weapons, better training, better everything. And every single one of them eventually lost because they underestimated what humans will do to stay free. The first Dominion landing craft touched down in New York City 20 minutes later. Marcus was not there. He was in Los Angeles, leading a strike team against the landing zone in downtown. Vex ran beside him, the Starwolf's presence lending strength and clarity through their bond. The shadow creatures were terrifying in person. They moved like liquid nightmares, their forms shifting and reforming as they advanced. Standard bullets passed through them with minimal effect. The soldiers who faced them in those first minutes died screaming. But humans adapted quickly. Within an hour, someone discovered that ultraviolet light disrupted the shadow creatures' forms. Within 2 hours, every military unit on Earth was retrofitting weapons with UV emitters. Within 4 hours, shadow creatures were dying by the hundreds. Fascinating, Vex observed as they watched a squad of Marines incinerate a group of Dominion soldiers with modified flamethrowers. Your species weaponized a scientific observation faster than I've ever seen any civilization manage. We've had practice, Marcus replied. Every war teaches us something new about killing. The battle for Earth raged for 3 days and 3 nights. Cities burned, millions died. The shadow creatures adapted to human tactics, and humans adapted in return. It was a constant evolution of warfare, each side learning from the other with lethal speed. Marcus was everywhere, it seemed. He commanded troops in California, then appeared leading a counterattack in Chicago. He rallied broken units and organized civilian evacuations. He slept perhaps 4 hours total across those 3 days. Vex stayed with him through all of it. The Starwolf's abilities proved invaluable. He could sense Dominion forces before they arrived, giving human defenders precious minutes to prepare. He could communicate directly with soldiers' minds, coordinating attacks across vast distances. And when the fighting got close, he was a nightmare of teeth and claws that made shadow creatures flee in something very close to fear. They're retreating, Vex said on the morning of the 4th day, his mental voice heavy with exhaustion. The landing forces are pulling back to their ships. Marcus looked at the sky, where Dominion vessels still hung like judgment. Why? They still have orbital superiority. They could glass the entire planet if they wanted. Because they've never had to, Vex explained. The Dominion conquers through terror and psychological dominance. They land forces to demonstrate overwhelming power, and species surrender. They've never actually had to fight a prolonged ground war because no one has ever made them fight one. Lieutenant Kim ran up to them, her uniform torn and bloodied, but her eyes bright with fierce pride. "Sir, reports are coming in from everywhere. The Dominion forces are retreating worldwide. We're pushing them back." Around them, soldiers were cheering, hugging each other. Some were crying with relief. They had faced the monsters from the stars and survived. But Marcus knew it wasn't over. "This was just the vanguard," he said quietly to Vex. "The main fleet is still coming." "Yes, but you've done something no species has done before. You've made the Dominion bleed. You've made them afraid." The wolf's golden eyes were tired but satisfied. "When the main fleet arrives, they won't be facing the confident conquerors they were before. They'll be facing soldiers who know that humans can hurt them." The Dominion fleet pulled back to lunar orbit. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. Human forces used the time to reinforce positions, develop new weapons, and tend to their wounded. The world held its breath, waiting for the next attack. Then something unexpected happened. A single Dominion ship descended from the fleet. Not a warship, a diplomatic vessel. It landed in Geneva, where the United Nations had established an emergency headquarters and requested to speak with human leadership. Marcus was summoned to the meeting along with General Hawkins and other military commanders. Vex refused to stay behind, and no one had the courage to argue with the Star Wolf. The Dominion ambassador was different from the shadow creatures they had fought. This being was more solid, more defined. Ancient and terrible, but also somehow exhausted. "You have done something that has never been done," the ambassador said, its voice reverberating through the chamber. "You have resisted the Shadow Dominion. You have made us pay a price we did not expect. For this, we offer you a choice." "What choice?" General Hawkins asked. "Submit now, and your species will be treated with relative mercy. You will serve the Dominion, but you will survive. Many of your people will be allowed to live in reasonable comfort." The ambassador's dark eyes swept the room. "Refuse, and we will bring the full might of our empire to bear. Not the vanguard force you defeated, the true fleet, 1,000 ships, weapons that can crack planets, forces that have ground civilizations to dust." Silence filled the room. The weight of the decision pressed down on everyone present. Accept slavery or face extinction. Marcus stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "I have a counteroffer." The ambassador turned its terrible gaze on him. "You are the bonded one, the human who carries a Star Wolf's flame. Speak. Leave. Now. This planet, this system, this sector of space. Take your ships and your shadow soldiers and go find some other species to terrorize." Marcus's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. "Because here's what's going to happen if you stay. You're going to lose." The ambassador made a sound that might have been laughter. "You cannot possibly believe that. Our forces vastly outnumber yours. Our technology is millennia beyond your primitive weapons." "You're right. On paper, we should have lost already. But here's the thing about humans that you don't understand." Marcus took another step forward, putting himself directly in front of the ancient horror. "We don't quit. We don't surrender. We don't give up hope even when hope is gone. You've conquered 1,000 worlds because every species eventually broke. But humans don't break. We bend and crack and shatter, and we still keep fighting." He pointed at the ambassador. "You've seen what we can do in 3 days. Imagine what we'll do in 3 years, in 3 decades. Every day we survive, we get stronger. We learn more. We develop new weapons and new tactics. You might beat us tomorrow or next week or next year, but you'll never truly conquer us. Because even if you kill every human on Earth, you'll spend centuries looking over your shoulder, waiting for the survivors to come back, waiting for us to figure out how to hurt you in ways you never imagined." The ambassador was silent for a long moment. Vex's voice echoed through Marcus's mind. Well said. Now let's see if it works. You speak with great conviction, the ambassador finally said. But conviction does not win wars. No. People win wars. And humans are the most stubborn, adaptable, vengeful people you've ever faced. Marcus smiled grimly. So here's my offer. Leave now, and we'll let you go in peace. Stay and fight, and we'll make you regret it for the rest of your eternal existence. The ambassador studied him for what felt like hours. Then it turned and left without another word. The Dominion fleet departed Earth's orbit 3 days later. Marcus watched them go from the roof of the UN building, Vex sitting beside him. Around the world, celebrations were erupting. Humanity had faced extinction and survived. They had looked into the darkness and refused to blink. They'll be back, Vex said. The Dominion doesn't forget. They'll spend years analyzing this defeat, preparing for the next encounter. I know. Marcus put his hand on the wolf's massive shoulder. But we'll be ready. Humanity knows now that we're not alone in the universe. We know what's out there. We'll prepare. The galaxy is going to change because of what happened here. Word will spread that a small species on a remote planet made the Shadow Dominion retreat. Other conquered worlds will hear about it. Other oppressed peoples will start to hope. Vex looked at Marcus with something like wonder in his golden eyes. You may have started something far larger than you realize. Marcus thought about that. A galaxy of enslaved species, hearing for the first time that the masters could be defied. He thought about Zorkon's words about dark times and choices that would determine the fate of every living being. Is that what the old king saw? Is that why he chose me? I believe so. He saw the fire in you. The fire that cannot be extinguished. He knew that fire would spread. Below them, the streets of Geneva were filled with celebrating people. Every nation, every culture, every language united in the joy of survival. For this moment at least, humanity was one pack, one family, one species that had stared death in the face and refused to look away. General Hawkins found them there an hour later. She looked exhausted, but proud. The Security Council wants to establish a permanent Earth defense force. Every nation contributing troops and resources. They want you to lead it, Cole. Marcus blinked. Me? You bonded with an alien wolf. You trained the soldiers who held the line. You talked a Dominion ambassador into retreat through sheer stubborn will. Hawkins smiled slightly. Who else would we ask? Marcus looked at Vex. The wolf's tail swayed with amusement. I told you this would be interesting, Vex said. You said a lot of things, and I was right about all of them. Clearly you should listen to me more often. Marcus turned back to Hawkins. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Vex stays with me as co-commander. We start recruiting veterans worldwide, and we reach out to other species the Dominion has conquered. Build alliances. Agreed. What else? Marcus looked up at the sky, where stars were just becoming visible in the evening light. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was retreating. Somewhere out there, oppressed peoples were hearing whispers of hope. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was beginning to change. We start planning for offense, not just defense. The Dominion will come back eventually. When they do, I don't want to be waiting for them. I want to meet them halfway. Hawkins nodded slowly. That's ambitious. Humans are ambitious. It's one of our better qualities. She extended her hand. Marcus shook it. The deal was sealed. That night, Marcus returned to his cabin in Montana. The place had been untouched since he left months ago. Dust covered everything. The whiskey bottle still sat on the porch where he had left it. He picked up the bottle and looked at it for a long moment. Then he walked to the edge of the porch and poured its contents onto the ground. Vex watched without comment. I don't need it anymore, Marcus said. I have purpose, I have pack, I have a war to prepare for, and a galaxy to liberate eventually. Marcus laughed softly. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. One thing at a time. The wolf settled onto the porch, his shimmering fur catching the moonlight. Thank you, Marcus. For what? For being exactly what Zorkon said you would be, for carrying the fire, for refusing to let it go out. Vex's golden eyes were warm. I have bonded with many beings over 800 years, kings and warriors and prophets. None of them made me feel hope the way you do. Marcus sat down beside the wolf, leaning against his massive form. I was ready to die when you showed up. I had nothing left, no purpose, no reason to keep going. And now? Now I have a galaxy full of reasons. Marcus closed his eyes. Rest now. Tomorrow we start building the force that's going to change everything. Vex rumbled with contentment. Together. Together. Above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns. Somewhere in the darkness, the Dominion nursed its wounds and planned its revenge. Somewhere else, enslaved species whispered about the humans who had made the Masters retreat. And in a small cabin in Montana, a veteran and his wolf slept peacefully, dreaming of the battles to come. The fire had been lit, and it would never be extinguished.